It's frozen, it's violent, and the hero? He doesn't want to save anyone. The Far Country wasn't your typical John Wayne frontier fantasy. It was cold, morally gray, and filmed where frostbite was a daily threat. Behind the scenes, the star nearly quit, the cattle froze to death, and one actor refused to rehearse because he said James Stewart intimidated him. These are 20 weird facts about the Far Country. And the bonus? A prop gun that became so famous, Stewart kept trying to steal it off set, saddle up. This trail runs ice cold.
Mountains hid its gold, icy glaciers guarded.
Number 1. Before cameras rolled in the Canadian wilderness, James Stewart almost walked away from the entire production. This wasn't just another Western for him. It was the 5th collaboration with director Anthony Mann, and their relationship had become strained, tense, almost combustible. Stewart had just finished Winchester 73, Bend of the River, The Naked Spur, and Thunder Bay with Mann. Each film pushed him further from the A.W. Shucks everyman persona that made him famous. Mann wanted darkness. He wanted violence. He wanted Stewart to play men who could kill without flinching. And Stewart? He was exhausted. The emotional toll of playing morally ambiguous anti-heroes was wearing him down. He told his agent he wanted out. He wanted to do a comedy, maybe a romance, something light. But Mann called him personally, not to beg, to challenge. He said, "This one's different. Your character doesn't save the town. He watches it burn." Stewart went silent on the phone. Then he said one word, "When?" That single conversation pulled him back in. And what followed was one of the coldest, cruelest westerns Hollywood had ever seen. Stewart didn't play a hero in the Far Country. He played a man who had to learn how to care. And that journey, it nearly broke him. Number 2. The studio wanted Gary Cooper, not James Stewart. Cooper was the face of Western heroism in the 1950s, tall, stoic, unshakable. He'd just come off High Noon, one of the most celebrated Westerns ever made. Universal Pictures thought Cooper would bring prestige, draw bigger audiences, and give the film instant credibility. They offered him the role of Jeff Webster first. Cooper read the script, paused, then quietly declined. His reason? The character was too cold, too selfish, too mean. Cooper said he couldn't play a man who abandons people in need, who lets innocent settlers die while he profits. It went against everything his image represented. When Stewart heard this, he didn't see it as a problem. He saw it as an opportunity. He'd spent his entire career playing likable men, righteous soldiers, humble townspeople. But with Anthony Mann, he discovered something darker inside himself, a capacity for rage, for selfishness, for survival at any cost. So when Universal reluctantly offered him the part after Cooper said no, Stewart didn't hesitate. He wanted to play the man Cooper couldn't, because sometimes the most interesting heroes are the ones who don't. All want to be heroes at all. And Jeff Webster, he was the coldest protagonist Stewart ever brought to life. Number 3. Filming took place in Jasper, Alberta, Canada, one of the most remote, punishing locations Hollywood had ever used for a major production. The crew arrived in early 1954 expecting crisp mountain air and picturesque snow. What they got was brutal, unrelenting cold that made every day a survival test. Temperatures dropped to 20 below zero. Equipment froze solid overnight. Film stock became brittle and snapped in cameras. Actors couldn't feel their fingers between takes. The production brought massive heating lamps to keep everyone from hypothermia, but they only worked if you stood directly in front of them. Move 3 feet away, and the cold would swallow you whole. James Stewart later said it was the most physically demanding shoot of his career, not because of stunts or action sequences, but because simply existing on that set required endurance. Walter Brennan, playing Stewart's sidekick Ben Tatum, was 60 years old at the time. The crew worried he wouldn't survive the conditions, but Brennan refused special treatment. He stood in the snow for hours, delivered his lines through chattering teeth, never complained once. One day, an assistant director suggested they build him a heated tent nearby. Brennan looked at him and said, "If Stewart can take it, so can I." That kind of toughness defined the entire production, because the Far Country wasn't just set in a frozen wasteland. It was made in one.
Gold, icy glaciers guarded its passes.
Number 4. The cattle drive scene almost didn't happen. It was supposed to be one of the film's signature moments, hundreds of head of cattle being driven through snow-covered mountain passes, a visual spectacle that would anchor the entire story. The production rented a massive herd from local Canadian ranchers and transported them to the location weeks before filming. They built shelters, arranged feeding schedules, hired wranglers to keep them healthy and calm. But nobody accounted for the cold. As temperatures plummeted, the cattle began dying. Not one or two, dozens. They'd freeze overnight despite the shelters, their bodies found stiff in the snow each morning. The production faced a nightmare scenario. Either delay filming and wait for warmer weather, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, or push forward with a dwindling herd. Anthony Mann made a brutal decision. They would film the cattle drive immediately, before they lost any more animals. The crew worked around the clock, shooting day and night, racing against the weather. What you see on screen, that massive herd moving through the mountains, that was filmed in a desperate 48-hour window. Some of the cattle in those shots were already sick, already dying. The wranglers knew it, the crew knew it, but Mann kept the cameras rolling because in his mind, that desperation, that sense of time running out, it matched the story perfectly. A film about survival, filmed under survival conditions. The cattle paid the price, but the scene became legendary. Number 5. Ruth Roman was not the first choice for Rhonda Castle, the tough, pragmatic saloon owner who becomes Stewart's love interest. The role was originally offered to Joan Crawford, who was looking for a way back into westerns after years of melodramas and film noir. Crawford loved the script. She loved Anthony Mann. She was ready to sign. Then she read the fine print of the location shooting requirements. Weeks in the Canadian wilderness, outdoor scenes in sub-zero temperatures, no luxury accommodations, no star treatment. Crawford, who was famous for her demands, her need for control, her elaborate beauty routines, realized this production would strip all of that away. She'd be cold, dirty, exhausted, sharing facilities with the crew. She made a call to the studio. She said she was out. Universal scrambled. They needed a strong actress who could handle both the physical demands and the emotional complexity. Ruth Roman had just finished Strangers on a Train for Hitchcock. She was tough, beautiful, and fearless. When they offered her the role, she asked one question: how cold will it be? They told her the truth: brutal, dangerous, unforgiving. Roman smiled and said, "Perfect." She arrived on set wearing layers of wool, carrying her own flask of whiskey to stay warm. She never complained, never asked for special treatment. And her chemistry with Stewart, that fire beneath the ice, it became one of the film's unexpected strengths. Crawford walked away. Roman walked into legend. Number 6. Walter Brennan won 3 Academy Awards during his career, but the Far Country gave him something even rarer: the chance to die on screen as a beloved character in a way that devastated audiences. His role as Ben Tatum, Jeff Webster's loyal sidekick, was written as comic relief, an old-timer with a quick wit and endless optimism. But Brennan and Mann had other plans. During rehearsals, Brennan told Mann he wanted to play Ben as more than just a sidekick. He wanted to give him depth, vulnerability, a sense that this cheerful old man was holding on to hope because the alternative was despair. Mann agreed. Together, they reshaped the character into something more profound. Ben became Jeff's conscience, the voice reminding him that caring about people wasn't weakness, it was humanity. And when Ben dies in the film's second act, shot down by the corrupt judge and his men, it doesn't feel like a plot point. It feels like murder. Stewart's reaction in that scene, the way his face goes cold, the way his eyes harden, that wasn't fully scripted. Brennan and Stewart had worked together before, and they'd become friends off-screen. When they filmed Ben's death, Stewart later admitted he let himself feel real grief. The pain you see on his face, that's genuine. Brennan gave him permission to go there. And in return, Stewart gave one of the rawest, most honest performances of his career. All because an old character actor wanted to die with meaning. Number 7. The villain wasn't supposed to be charming. In the original script, Judge Gannon was written as a one-dimensional tyrant, a power-hungry bully who controlled the town through fear and violence. Standard Western villain. Then John McIntyre read for the part. McIntyre was a character actor with a warm face and a gentle voice, the kind of man you'd trust immediately. Anthony Mann watched his audition and realized something brilliant. What if the villain wasn't obviously evil? What if he smiled, told jokes, acted like everyone's friend while quietly destroying lives? McIntyre got the role, and he transformed it. He played Gannon as a man who believed his own lies, who convinced himself that stealing gold claims and murdering prospectors was good for the community. He'd shake your hand, offer you a drink, then send his men to kill you before sunrise. The performance was so unsettling that some test audiences didn't realize Gannon was the villain until halfway through the film. They thought he was misunderstood, maybe even heroic. That confusion was exactly what Mann wanted. Because the scariest villains aren't monsters. They're the ones who make you doubt your own judgment. McIntyre later said, playing Gannon made him uncomfortable because he had to find the humanity in a monster. And that humanity, twisted and corrupted, made Gannon one of the most memorable villains in 1950s westerns. All because they cast a nice guy to play pure evil.
Справедливий суд. Візьми їх.
Number 8. The final shootout wasn't in the original script. The screenplay ended with a courtroom confrontation, dialogue heavy, morally complex, but lacking the visceral catharsis audiences expected from a Western. Mann hated it. He told the writers it felt like a letdown, that after 2 hours of violence and betrayal, the audience needed blood, needed justice delivered through gunfire, not words. The studio pushed back. They wanted something different, more sophisticated, more adult. Mann ignored them. During production, while filming in Canada, he quietly wrote a new ending, a shootout in the snow. Jeff Webster walking through the town alone, hunting down Judge Gannon's men one by one. No music, no heroic speeches, just cold, methodical revenge. Mann showed the new pages to Stewart. Stewart loved it. He said it was the only ending that made sense for the character. So they filmed it without telling the studio, using budget allocated for other scenes. When Universal executives saw the rough cut, they were furious. They demanded Mann restore the original ending. Mann refused. He said if they changed it, he'd take his name off the film. The studio lawyers got involved. Contracts were reviewed. Threats were made. But Mann had one advantage. The test audiences who saw the shootout version loved it. Scores went through the roof. So Universal caved. The shootout stayed, and the far country became one of the few westerns where the hero doesn't talk his way out. He shoots his way out. Cold, silent, final.
Назад і забрати мою худобу з собою.
Number 9. James Stewart developed a strange ritual during production that nobody understood until years later. Every morning before filming, he'd walk alone into the woods surrounding the set. No assistant, no script, no coffee, just Stewart and the trees. He'd disappear for 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes longer. The crew started joking he was talking to ghosts. Walter Brennan thought he was rehearsing lines. Ruth Roman worried he was having a breakdown. One day Anthony Mann followed him. Not to spy, just to make sure he was okay. What he found was Stewart standing completely still, breathing slowly, staring at nothing. Mann started to approach, then stopped. He realized what was happening. Stewart was emptying himself out. He was shedding everything warm, everything kind, everything the audience loved about Jimmy Stewart. Because Jeff Webster wasn't Jimmy Stewart. He was colder, harder, more damaged. And to play him convincingly, Stewart had to kill his own likability every single morning. Mann never told anyone what he saw. But after that day, he made sure nobody disturbed Stewart during his morning walks. Because what looked like eccentricity was actually method. Stewart was teaching himself how to be cruel, and when the cameras rolled, he'd become someone else entirely. Someone who could watch people suffer and not lift a finger to help. That transformation, it didn't happen in makeup or wardrobe. It happened alone in the woods, where James Stewart murdered his own persona and became Jeff Webster. Number 10. The town set built for Dawson City was massive, one of the largest Western sets ever constructed in Canada at the time. Main Street, saloons, a courthouse, dozens of buildings that looked weathered and real. The production spared no expense, bringing in authentic period details, aged wood, hand-painted signs. It took 6 weeks to build, and then, 2 days before filming was scheduled to begin, a freak storm hit. Not snow, ice, freezing rain that coated everything in a thick, crystalline shell. The set became a frozen sculpture, beautiful and completely unusable. Ice covered the boardwalks. Icicles hung from roofs. Doors froze shut. The production faced catastrophe. They couldn't film like this. Actors couldn't walk without slipping, and the visual continuity would be ruined if some scenes had ice and others didn't. But then Anthony Mann had an idea. What if they kept it? What if Dawson City looked like a place slowly being consumed by winter, where even the buildings were dying? He showed the crew his vision. Film it exactly as it is. Lean into the cold. Make the environment another character. The studio was horrified. They wanted to wait for the ice to melt. Mann said no. He ordered cameras to roll immediately. What you see in the film, that haunting frozen town, that wasn't planned. It was an accident turned into art. The far country became one of the few westerns where the setting felt truly hostile, where every frame reminded you that nature doesn't care about your story. It just kills, beautifully. Number 11. Corinne Calvet, playing the French prospector René Vaillant, couldn't ride a horse, at all. She'd grown up in Paris, spent her career in drawing rooms and ballrooms, never been near livestock. When she arrived in Canada and saw the horses waiting, she panicked. The production had assumed a Hollywood actress could handle basic riding. They were wrong. Mann gave her 3 days to learn, 3 days to master what most Western actors spent years perfecting. Calvet hired a local wrangler who worked with her dawn to dusk. She fell constantly, bruised her tailbone, got thrown twice. But she refused a stunt double. She said if Stewart could freeze in the snow, she could learn to ride. By the time cameras rolled, she could stay in the saddle, barely. Watch her scenes closely. She's gripping the reins like her life depends on it. Because it did. Mann kept those takes because the fear you see, that's real. A woman genuinely terrified, riding through mountains, praying she doesn't fall. It added unexpected authenticity. Renee wasn't supposed to be an experienced rider anyway. She was a French transplant in over her head. Calvet's genuine terror made the character work. Sometimes the best performances come from actual survival. Number 12. The script originally had Jeff Webster partnering with Ben Tatum in a business venture, two friends building something together. But during early rehearsals, Stewart suggested something darker. What if Jeff was using Ben? What if their friendship was transactional, and Jeff only kept Ben around because he was useful? Mann loved it. It transformed their dynamic from simple camaraderie into something morally complicated. Watch the film again knowing this. Stewart plays Jeff with subtle cruelty toward Ben. He dismisses his opinions, talks over him, treats him like hired help rather than a partner. Brennan, understanding what Stewart was doing, played Ben as someone who knows he's being used but stays anyway because loneliness is worse than disrespect. That subtext made Ben's death even more devastating. Because when Jeff finally realizes what he's lost, it's not just a friend, it's the only person who loved him despite knowing exactly who he was. Stewart later said, this was the key to making Jeff's transformation believable. He couldn't start as a good man who made bad choices. He had to start as a bad man who'd forgotten how to be good. And the only way to show that was through how he treated the one person who cared about him most. Number 13. J.C. Flippin, playing the prospector Rube Morris, was a former Broadway star who hated Hollywood. He took the role only because he needed money after a series of bad investments. He showed up expecting to hate every minute. Instead, something unexpected happened. The freezing conditions, the stripped-down production, the lack of Hollywood glamour, it reminded him why he loved performing in the first place. No pretense, no luxury, just actors in brutal conditions telling a story. Flippin stopped complaining after the first week. He started helping younger actors with their performances. He'd gather the cast at night in the hotel, running lines, sharing stories from his theater days. He became the production's unofficial morale officer. When Brennan's character died, Flippin organized a mock funeral between takes. The cast stood in the snow, giving eulogies for Ben Tatum as if he were real. Stewart wept, not acting, genuine tears. The crew watched in silence. When filming wrapped, Flippin told Mann it was the best experience of his film career. He said he'd forgotten that making movies could feel like making theater, raw, immediate, true. Flippin never became a major film star, but he kept working steadily for years afterward. And he always said the far country reminded him why he became an actor in the first place. Number 14. The famous scene where Jeff Webster punches his horse actually happened by accident. During one take, Stewart's horse spooked and reared unexpectedly. Stewart, trying to regain control, instinctively pushed the horse's head down harder than intended. The horse stumbled slightly. Mann yelled, "Cut!" Everyone rushed over expecting disaster. But Stewart was fine. The horse was fine. And Mann had just captured something visceral and shocking. He asked Stewart if he'd be willing to do it again, intentionally this time, with the horse trainer's approval and proper safety measures. Stewart was reluctant. He loved horses. The trainer assured him the horse wouldn't be hurt if they staged it correctly, using a trained animal and controlled choreography. They filmed it 3 times. Each time, Stewart's face showed genuine discomfort. He wasn't comfortable displaying violence toward an animal, even staged violence. But that discomfort made the moment work. It showed an audience how far Jeff Webster had fallen. A man who'd punch his own horse was a man who'd lost his humanity. The scene became controversial. Animal rights groups protested. Some theaters cut it, but Mann defended it. He said it was necessary to show Jeff at his lowest before he could rise. Sometimes darkness has to be visible to make redemption meaningful. Number 15. Anthony Mann and James Stewart had a secret code they used throughout production. When Mann wanted Stewart to go darker, more violent, more emotionally closed off, he'd simply say, "Winchester." It was a reference to their first collaboration, Winchester 73, where Stewart had first explored playing damaged, dangerous men. Stewart would nod and immediately shift his performance. Colder eyes, tighter jaw, less humanity. When Mann wanted him to soften, to show vulnerability, he'd say, "Philadelphia," a reference to The Philadelphia Story, where Stewart played the romantic, idealistic reporter. Again, Stewart would adjust, instantly. The crew never understood what these words meant. They just knew that Mann would whisper one word, and Stewart would transform completely. Years later, in an interview, Stewart explained the system. He said, working with Mann required him to access different parts of himself rapidly, often within the same scene. He needed shorthand to know which version of himself Mann wanted in any given moment. Winchester meant the killer. Philadelphia meant the lover. And in the far country, Mann said Winchester far more often than Philadelphia. Because Jeff Webster wasn't a man who loved easily. He was a man who'd built walls so high, even he couldn't see over them anymore. That code helped Stewart navigate those walls, one word at a time. Number 16. The film's most iconic shot, Jeff Webster standing alone on a ridge overlooking the frozen valley, wasn't planned. It was stolen. The production was behind schedule. Light was fading. Mann needed to move on to the next scene. But cinematographer William H. Daniels saw something. The way the setting sun hit the mountains. The way Stewart's silhouette cut against the sky. He grabbed a camera and told Mann, "Give me 2 minutes." Mann was furious. They didn't have 2 minutes, but Daniels was already filming. He positioned Stewart on the ridge and told him, "Don't move, don't act, just stand there and think about Ben." Stewart stood motionless. Daniels captured it in one continuous take. 90 seconds of Stewart's back to the camera, mountains stretching endlessly before him. When Mann saw the footage, he didn't speak for a long moment. Then he told Daniels, "That's the movie. That's the whole movie in one shot." That image became the film's iconic poster. It defined the far country more than any action sequence or dialogue scene. A lone man, a frozen wilderness, the space between isolation and redemption. All captured because a cinematographer stole 2 minutes and a star was willing to stand still and feel something true. Sometimes the best moments in cinema aren't written or directed. They're stolen from time itself. Number 17. Royal Dano, playing the miner, Strap Davis, was a method actor before method acting became fashionable. He stayed in character between takes, slept in costume, refused to shower for weeks to maintain authenticity. The cast avoided him because he smelled like genuine frontier dirt, but his commitment paid off in unexpected ways. During the climactic shootout, Dano's character gets shot and falls into the snow. The script called for him to die quickly, but Dano had other ideas. He stayed down for 30 seconds longer than scripted, twitching, gasping, dying slowly in extreme close-up. Mann kept the cameras rolling. What Dano gave him was something rare in westerns, death that looked real, not cinematic, not heroic, just ugly and painful and slow. When they cut, Mann walked over and said, "What was that?" Dano replied, "That's how people actually die." Mann used every second of it. That death scene became one of the film's most haunting moments, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. Dano never became a major star. He worked steadily as a character actor for decades, but directors who saw The Far Country always remembered him. The guy who understood that dying isn't beautiful, it's just the end, and sometimes the end takes longer than anyone wants to watch. Number 18. The final cost of production was nearly double the original budget. Universal executives were livid. They demanded explanations. Mann showed them the footage, the frozen town, the dying cattle, the mountains swallowing men whole. They went quiet. Because what Mann had captured wasn't just a Western, it was a document of survival. Every dollar over budget was visible on screen. You could see where the money went. Into the cold, into the danger, into the authenticity that made The Far Country different from every other Western released that year. The studio wanted to punish Mann by cutting his budget on future projects. Then the box office numbers came in. The Far Country became one of the highest-grossing Westerns of 1954. Audiences couldn't get enough of it. Critics called it Stewart's best performance. Suddenly, that budget overrun looked like genius. Universal gave Mann and Stewart carte blanche for their next collaboration. They made The Man from Laramie the following year, even darker, even more violent. But it started with The Far Country, a film that proved sometimes you have to spend money to make something real. Sometimes authenticity costs more than spectacle. And sometimes the best investment a studio can make is trusting a director who refuses to compromise, even when it bankrupts them. Number 19. After filming wrapped, the cast and crew held a screening in Jasper for the local residents who'd supported the production, ranchers who'd rented cattle, townspeople who'd appeared as extras, stunt riders who'd risked their lives in the mountains. Everyone gathered in a small theater that could barely fit 200 people. When the lights went down and the film started, something magical happened. These people who'd lived through the production, who'd seen the behind-the-scenes chaos, watched their home transformed into art. They saw their mountains on screen, their snow, their cold, and they wept. Not because the film was sad, though it was, but because someone had finally shown the world what their lives looked like. The brutality of winter, the isolation of frontier existence, the thin line between civilization and savagery. When the film ended, the audience stood and applauded for 5 full minutes. Stewart cried. Mann couldn't speak. Because in that moment, they realized they hadn't just made entertainment. They'd made something true. The Far Country wasn't filmed in Canada just for pretty scenery. It was filmed there because the story demanded that landscape, that cold, that particular kind of loneliness. And the people who live there every day recognized their own lives on screen. That's when Mann knew they'd succeeded, not when the studio approved it, not when critics praised it, but when the people who knew that world best said, yes, that's what it's really like. Number 20. James Stewart kept trying to steal one of the prop Winchesters used in the film. Not as a souvenir, because he'd bonded with that specific rifle. He'd carried it for weeks, learned its weight, its balance, the way it kicked when fired with blanks. By the end of production, he said it felt like an extension of his arm. On the last day of shooting, Stewart asked the prop master if he could buy it. The prop master said no. Universal policy. All weapons returned to inventory. Stewart offered twice its value, 3 times. The prop master wouldn't budge. So Stewart waited until wrap party, got the prop master drunk, and tried again. Still no. Weeks later, Stewart called the head of Universal. He said he'd do another Western for them, any Western, if they'd give him that Winchester. They laughed and said no. The rifle remained in Universal's prop department for years. Stewart never forgot about it. Every time he visited the studio, he'd ask about it. In 1964, 10 years after The Far Country, the prop master who'd refused him finally retired. As a retirement gift, his replacement sent Stewart the Winchester. No explanation, just the rifle in a wooden case. Stewart mounted it in his home office. He never fired it again. He just kept it close, because that rifle had carried him through the coldest shoot of his life. And sometimes the things we can't let go of are the ones that remind us we survived. Bonus fact: there's a moment in the film where Jeff Webster stares into a campfire and whispers something inaudible. The script didn't call for it. Stewart added it during filming. For decades, fans debated what he said. Lip readers offered theories. Audio engineers tried to enhance the sound. No one could agree. In 1991, during an interview, Stewart finally revealed the truth. He was reciting a prayer his father taught him as a child, a prayer for the dead. He was saying goodbye to every character he'd played before The Far Country. Goodbye to George Bailey. Goodbye to the idealistic senators and heroic pilots. Because after playing Jeff Webster, something changed inside him. He'd learned how to access darkness, and once you open that door, it never fully closes again. Stewart said, "The Far Country was the line dividing his career. Everything before was light. Everything after had shadows. And in that moment by the fire, he was mourning the actor he used to be. That's why you can't hear the words. They weren't meant for the audience. They were meant for ghosts." The Far Country didn't just change Westerns. It changed the man who starred in it. And some transformations, they echo forever.